The Ebola outbreak is raging throughout West Africa now. For the first time, a case of Ebola made its way back to the United States without anyone catching it first. The patient is currently under a quarantine in a Dallas hospital, and the CDC is reacting to the news. For more information on the threat of Ebola, we're turning to Mike Adams. He's a regular here on the program. He's also got a new website out called biodefense.com, which gives practical tips to hygiene and to protect yourself from Ebola. Mike, thanks for joining us. The Daily Mail is now just releasing information that up to 12 people could in fact be infected with Ebola, including 5 children. It was revealed today as U.S. health officials are scrambling to contain the deadly virus following first diagnosis on U.S. soil. Just before we went to air, you mentioned that the timeline now could in fact be that this person caught the Ebola virus in the airplane. Could you elaborate?
Yes, thanks, Gary, for inviting me to your show. We don't know really the origins of the infection for this individual who's in Dallas. We don't even know his name. The government hasn't released much information. But the timeline of him beginning to show symptoms really lines up with the possibility that he may have contracted the infection on the airplane as he was traveling, which means there could be another patient zero who has already spread the infection to other people, and that patient may be running around somewhere in the United States, yet undiagnosed. They might be in a hospital right now under care for a severe flu or something. Keep in mind that the hospital at first did not know that this individual had Ebola. They sent him back home with antibiotics, which are useless against Ebola. They allowed him to potentially infect other people for 10 days in the Dallas area. And the important point of this, Gary, is that the United States government, which keeps telling us that we have nothing to worry about, that they have everything under control, has now been clearly proven wrong. They don't have this under control. It's out of control, and it has now crossed the Atlantic Ocean and is now in America, spreading among potentially many people.
Now, Mike, in the program today, we've already revealed that that reporters in Atlanta have revealed that instructions have been given to funeral parlors on how to handle Ebola bodies, cadavers, as well as we reported just a few months ago that the National Guard has already received Ebola detection kits. President Obama has already issued an executive order allowing the forced roundup of American citizens in the event that this becomes widespread. Obviously, these are all very frightening scenarios that nobody wants to see play out. What do you think is going to happen here? Because of the timeline of this individual going into the hospital, it takes several days for other symptoms, other people to show the signs. Could we possibly see an exponential growth of this outbreak within the next 30 days?
Well, it's certainly possible. I do believe that the CDC may be able to contain this one particular outbreak from this one person. But the real question is, this guy flew right in. Someone could walk right into the United States with Ebola. There is zero defense. Homeland Security is completely defenseless against Ebola coming into the United States. People are able to just fly directly from Liberia or Sierra Leone to one other airport, and then boom, they're right into the United States. So we are defenseless against this here. The CDC only has limited resources, limited personnel. They may be able to clamp down on one infection, maybe 2, maybe 3, but what about 50? And keep in mind that Ebola likes to spread during the winter, and winter is coming in North America. That's going to provide more opportunities for Ebola to spread. It likes the cold weather. It's afraid of sunlight, but it likes the darkness. So if you think about areas where Ebola could spread in the United States, think about the New York subway system. It's underground. There's no sunlight down there, so there's no ultraviolet light to dismantle the protein chains of the virus. And people are moving amongst each other very rapidly. It has the potential to spread extremely quickly in a city with a subway system or any kind of a public transportation system that's underground. So we are not being told the truth. This is far more serious than the government is admitting. And yes, to answer your question, it does have the potential to spread exponentially, not just in the next month or two, but over the next few years. They might keep it under control right now, but then next spring, it really explodes in some city in the United States or Mexico City or even in Canada. Now that it's on the continent of North America, it could go anywhere.
Mike, you mentioned the travel, and I want to get into the markets and some of the reactions there. But what about the British in the UK? They've canceled all flights into and out of the infected nations, but we're still allowing travel. What are some simple solutions that the American government could take or should take?
Well, they should have long ago canceled travel in and out of Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Guinea by air. Air travel is obviously the fastest way for this virus to spread. That should have been shut down long ago. What we see here with the United States government in every catastrophe, including Hurricane Katrina, for example, is that the government is too little, too late. And while in certain disasters, such as the Gulf of Mexico oil spill, the BP oil spill from a few years ago, you can eventually clean it up because oil doesn't self-replicate. It doesn't double every 30 days. Ebola is a self-replicating disaster that will spread out of control, out of containment very, very quickly if you don't get on top of it. Arizona State University study showed that for every one infection of Ebola happening today, another 1.4 to 1.7 people are getting infected. If you multiply that over just a few generations, you start to see this is an exponential explosion in the infection rates, which is why the CDC has predicted 1.4 million infections by the end of January 2015 in Africa. And their estimation did not include any risk of infection in North America at all.
Now, Mike, what about the markets and the stock value for biotech companies? What have you been witnessing since this news has broken?
Well, the stock prices of companies like Tecmira, which has an antiviral drug, and GlaxoSmithKline, which is working on the vaccine, the Ebola vaccine experiments in humans right now, which is a little frightening all by itself. But both of these companies have already seen an increase in stock value from this. It's clear that the pharmaceutical industry sees Ebola as a profit opportunity. And no doubt what we're going to see pushed very aggressively by the CDC, which is really in bed with the pharmaceutical interests, as they have been with all previous pandemic and even false pandemics, such as the swine flu, is a push for an Ebola vaccine mandate. That is how you maximize the profits for the manufacturers of the vaccine and also get medical compliance across the population. So this is something that's going to be very contentious if it is ever announced. But the government could mandate a vaccine.
Now, Mike, in West Africa, nearly 3,000 people have died, but thousands of others have actually survived Ebola without a vaccine. How are they recovering without a vaccine?
Well, the simple truth that the mainstream media is typically not covering is that your immune system is designed to save your life from an infection. In fact, you come from a long line of survivors. All your ancestors had amazing immune system technology built into your DNA that will save your life. Every person who has survived Ebola so far has done so solely because of their immune system. So the way to survive this is to support and enhance immune function. And that's what I've been teaching over at biodefense.com.
Yeah, I want to ask you about that, because in one of your videos on biodefense.com, you mentioned herbal medicines fighting Ebola. And the first drug used against Ebola was actually derived from tobacco plants. So where is the ZMapp now? Why haven't we heard anything about their company since test units first worked on the first patients? And what are some of these other remedies?
Well, yeah, the ZMapp drug, I'm sure they're going to be manufacturing as much as they can in anticipation of very, very high demand. But the truth is that natural medicinal herbs have been used for literally thousands of years, including in ancient China in Chinese medicine, to stop plagues from spreading. We know there are antiviral properties in many, many different plants, including common culinary herbs such as peppermint and oregano, basil, many others. Even cinnamon has antiviral properties. So the fact that the entire medical system right now is ignoring these potentially immune boosting natural medicines, natural plants, medicinal foods. It's astonishing. The official advice to the public has been, well, wash your hands and then wait around for a vaccine. People should be told right now, urgently, boost your immune function, increase your intake of natural plants, antiviral herbs, vitamin D supplements, which boost immune function and activate your DNA to fight infectious disease. People should be told this urgently everywhere around the world right now, and yet there's not a word of this from traditional conventional sources. It's just astonishing.
Now, if Ebola does break out on a large scale here in the United States, we do know, as I mentioned, the Department of Defense is prepared to forcibly corral people into quarantine zones. Mike, do doctors have to issue an official diagnosis before such a quarantine order could be initiated? What's the protocol?
No. Simply someone from working for the government, a FEMA agent, simply has to state their belief that you are symptomatic of a possible infectious disease, and that's it. There's no doctor order required. There's no medical diagnosis required. It is simply an opinion of someone who may not even be medically trained whatsoever. The really crucial thing to watch out for here, Gary, is, and this is the idea that I've been trying to teach people, everything that we have seen take place in Sierra Leone and Liberia is a roadmap and even a test case for what will happen in America, including medical martial law, forced quarantines, isolation, and those will lead to food shortages. That's the economy in Liberia is collapsing right now. Washington Post just did an article on it yesterday, collapsing into what they call economic hell. Those are their words, not mine. Sierra Leone is under quarantine. The national economy is heading for a state of collapse because when people are under quarantine, they don't go to work. So all the systems of society that we normally rely on, they need workers to make them function. Banks, water treatment facilities, nuclear power plants, petroleum refineries, food deliveries to your grocery store, farming, all of these functions need people. If the people are told to stay home, stay in isolation, then everything that makes society run starts to break down. And the United States is a more specialized, more highly complex society than Liberia, which means we are more susceptible to systemic collapse based on the non-functioning of very intricate webs of dependence.
Now, Mike, we're almost out of time here, but 3,000 American soldiers are already being used in West Africa to build quarantine zones. Why do you think the Obama administration would place so many Americans in the path of such great dangers? Was that a foolish act by him?
No, it was a theatrical act. It was designed to create the global theater that says the United States cares about these victims and is doing something about it. In truth, they're only building enough tents and shacks, makeshift hospitals to have cots for about 1,500 people. And yet the estimates are that this might infect 1.4 million people. So it's a token attempt. It's virtually useless.
But Mike, do you think that our soldiers are going to have the potential to be infected while they're there?
Yes, they do. Clearly they do. They're interacting with the local population. Our soldiers have the potential to be infected and bring those infections back home. It's a very real risk, and I think it's an unacceptable risk. What we should be doing is sending these 3,000 soldiers to the southern border of the United States to protect our borders so that these diseases can't just walk across the border right into America. Now, yes, maybe we can help Liberia and Sierra Leone with food supplies and economic assistance, but to put our human soldiers in harm's way over there is, I think, unacceptable. Our soldiers deserve better than that. We should bring them home and defend our borders right here in America.
All right, Mike, thank you for joining us once again on WHDT. We'll have you back.
Thank you, Gary.
All right, that was Mike Adams from naturalnews.com. Be sure to check out his website at biodefense.com for some really interesting information on how to protect yourself from the Ebola virus.